All right. Hello and welcome to another segment of SiStar Light Up. Haven't done this in a while, been taking a little break. It's good to take breaks. And, so here we are today with Stacy Olsen. I'm so excited that Stacy is here. Stacy is an amazing soul. She is a beautiful person. We've connected through my Heal Thyself Summit that's coming up the week of May 17th. And we have done some work together. Well, she's helped me do some work with her through her life coaching. And I'm so excited to have her here. So Stacy, tell me a little bit about, we're gonna talk about a little bit about the process, right? Or the result of the process. People can catch the beginning of the process if they sign up for the summit, which is going to be amazing. So we're going to talk about the end of the process. But before we do that, I want to talk about you and your journey from, your previous life, because we all have these previous lives, right? 9 to 5 regular work life or whatever it is, or maybe you're still kind of sort of in that. But to this life coaching space, to the space of being a yoga instructor and a life coach and really helping people, women find their way. So just tell me a little bit about that, your journey.
Well, you mentioned before, go back as far as you want. So in 1973, no, I'm just kidding. I'll kind of give a little overview of a while ago and then fast forward it.
Perfect.
So my name is Stacy, and you already introduced me, but I always feel like I need to remind everyone. I was born in Wisconsin, moved to Texas when I was 11 years old, which was a huge shift. It caused a lot of emotional anxiety, and it was scary, and I left all my friends, and so it was a big move. My parents at the same time separated, so dealt with that. We were very poor, food stamps and all. So I started working when I was 11, had a paper route and babysat and did all kinds of things. So I've been in this 9 to 5, like you say, work world since I was a preteen, really. I was raised in a very strictly religious household and was always taught to follow the rules, no matter what they were. And if you asked why, I got told many times because I said so, or because the Bible says so, or because God says so. It's like, okay. So I took a lot of that in stride, but I always had questions in my head about, why do I believe this way? Why do I feel this way? Why do I think that way? And it wasn't until I was older, teenager, graduating high school, that I really started to dive into all of my questions. And rather than going to the people that I had been raised by or around, I started just kind of doing some research on my own. And now I'll kind of fast forward a bit, but in about 2000, I went through a divorce and wound up finding a therapist, which I had not done before. Well, I had when I was a kid, but it didn't go very well because it's kind of one of those things where it needs to be voluntary. You've got to want it. And so I know you know that. And so I started in therapy, and my therapist recommended that I try yoga to calm down my thoughts, kind of get in touch with my feelings. And of course, I had been taught that yoga was bad. Meditation was emptying your mind and it leaves room for the devil. And so I was super resistant to it. And being my therapist, I told her everything. She understood why, and encouraged me, though, to just find like the physical aspect of it. Like, forget about the meditation and the spirituality. She was like, just go and like do some poses and like get into your body and just do the physical part of it. So my first experience with yoga was it was a 6 weeks beginner's course. And in the first one, all we did was learn how to breathe. And of course, I'm sitting there and I'm like, why are you teaching me how to breathe? You breathe in, you breathe out, right? Well, I discovered after that 1 hour session that I did not think about anything at all except for my breath. And that's like the day that I just completely fell in love with yoga, all aspects of it, although I didn't even know them yet.
Yeah.
So I took classes for a long time and developed a practice, physical practice. And then in 2008, I joined teacher training. And I went in and we did our intros in a circle, and I introduced myself and I said, I'm Stacey. I learned about yoga and I have no intention of being an instructor. I'm just here because I want to learn more about like the meaning behind the poses and why we do the poses and things like that. Well, fast forward to a few years later, I was in 500-hour teacher training and I was learning how to teach teachers. And that's really when my interest in coaching came up, because I knew a couple of yoga life coaches. So it was like a yoga-based life coaching, which is really what I do now. Because yoga, yoga does not mean downward facing dog. Yoga literally means like to do an asana. It literally just means to sit. So yoga encompasses all things. It really just means to unite. So uniting your mind and body and heart and soul, which is what really I do now. But it took a long road, a lot of steps, and a lot of like learning to really trust my own intuition and to kind of not block out the external noise and chatter, but really to allow those chatters to either align with how I felt about things or not. And so that's really what I do now, is try and connect with women that I work with, connect their thought process with their physical being, with how they're feeling, and then moving into an intuitive soul coaching.
Yeah, it's awesome. You know, I just love to hear, this is why I love doing this live, because I love to hear people's journeys and their stories. Like, it's just, we just have to listen to the whispers, right? And to the little, like our friend Karen says, the breadcrumbs, follow the breadcrumbs, because they're laid out for us if we just kind of understand. And you were, obviously because of your religious upbringing, you were kind of scared of this process, but you tried it anyway, because something in your soul, I'm sure, said, try this anyway and see what happens. I mean, for you to have gone to being scared of yoga to like now 500 hours later, or however many hours later, teaching teachers, right? And then helping women through this process, incorporating, body, breath, mind, body, soul, to really help the change happen. So
totally. And it was a lot of first steps that didn't go in the right direction. So like, besides therapy, I also tried medications. I tried self-medicating. I tried partying to forget everything. I tried codependent relationships. I tried it all. What wound up working, though, was really connecting to myself. And like I said, the external chatters, the external influences, I learned how to make those work for me and with me and not against me.
Yeah. So what got you to the point to say, this is what I'm going to do? Like, knowing that you had been this person that worked hard, right? Worked harder instead of smarter, like most of us do, since a very young age. How did you kind of break out of that to say, okay, I could do this as a thing, as a living, for a living?
Well, so when I was taking my teacher trainings and when I was taking my life coaching certifications, I always had in my head, one day when I'm able to retire from the corporate world, my second career is going to be teaching yoga on a beach. And so I always looked at that as like my secondary career, not really something that I could do full time. It was funny because it's funny what can be a catalyst sometimes. But I was chatting with a guy that I worked with years ago, and he just said, "Hey, so what are you doing this weekend?" It was a Friday. And I said, "Well, I have a yoga teacher training group that I'm leading. And it's all day Saturday, it's all day Sunday." And he goes, oh, so you're working all weekend. And I was like, oh, I guess that is kind of a job, isn't it? And I was like, wait a minute. Maybe I could do this now. And it wasn't right then that I made the switch, but a couple of years later, it's a long story, but I met a coach. She was a nutritional coach, actually. And although you find like all coaching kind of leads to life coaching, really.
That's right. It's
like
true.
You and I have talked about, it's never about losing 10 pounds. It's about what's underneath all of that. So I started working with her because I was on several different types of medications for thyroid issues, for depression, for anxiety. I was on all these meds, and she was very, she wasn't a nutritionalist. She was more like an herbalist and like a homeopathic remedy coach. And so my goal with her was to get off of all medications. And so we worked together for about 6 months, and I worked with my doctors as well, just to make sure everything was good for my body, and wound up being coached by her through starting my business, through my move, through some life things. And then I wound up going on a retreat with her to Bali in the beginning of 2019. And when I came back from that, I sold my house, I quit my job. It was kind of like leaping off the cliff. It wasn't taking the step anymore. It was like, okay, the steps have been taken. Now it's time to jump.
Nothing like a trip to Bali, like that will make you do it for sure. So many people.
Girl.
I know a few people who've gone to places like Bali or, and then taken that leap to say like, whatever, I don't know if it's the serenity of the island or the beauty or the fact that there's so much more out there and you can see that even in this very small island, but yeah.
I'm getting chills now just remembering how amazing it is. It's like it truly, the ground there just speaks to your soul, and you start to drop like all of these, I can't, I'm not enough. Yeah. You start to drop all of your tapes that have been playing in your head for ever.
Right.
And you just, like you said, you just kind of learn to, okay, I'm dropping everything. Right. Well, and also I kind of feel guilty a little bit for this, but for 2020, I always have like a word that I'm going to work on. And for 2020, my word was surrender, which if you can't surrender in the year that we had, then you're definitely holding on too tight.
That's right. Seriously.
I kind of feel bad. I'm like, uh-oh, did I impose that on everybody accidentally?
That's so funny. And I, for people out there, like it doesn't have to be a retreat or a trip to Bali. It could be anything. You just have to listen to the whispers and look at and see the signs, because the signs are there. So it's about allowing yourself to go inward and really, focus on what it is that you need to be able to evolve and grow and become a better person, Well,
and that's the main thing that I learned, and the main thing that I coach to right now is like through therapy, through coaching, I have all the answers. I remember I used to get so frustrated with my therapist when she would ask me a question and I would say, I don't know. And she would say, well, then think about it. And then I'd leave and I'd be like, why do I go see her? She's not giving me any answers. And then all of a sudden, one day I'd be like, oh, that.
That's right. All the time. Every time my clients say, I don't know, I'm like, well, you're the only one who does know. Yep. So when you're ready to talk about it, we can talk about it, because our very first thing is, I don't know, because you don't want to go there. You know the answer. You have all the answers for yourself. Yeah.
All of them. Yes.
Yeah. It's so great and amazing that you just said, hey, I'm doing it. And the fact that you found this person for this supposedly this one goal, right? And then all these other things evolved from it, And but that in itself, that's so funny that your word for 2019 was surrender, because you had already surrendered many, many times, surrendering to yoga, surrendering to this nutritional coach or whatever it was, and allowing her to hold that additional space for you to say, hey, and listening, right? You were ready to listen at that point in time, because maybe a few years before that, like, what, business, start my own business. And I think that story that you told about having that conversation with your friend, and he said, you're working all weekend. That was the seed that was planted, whether you realized it or not, it was a planted seed. And then you were like, well, yeah, I could totally do this. He already said I was doing it. So
yes. I need to thank him for that.
Yeah. He probably won't even remember the conversation. That's usually how those, I think, divinely timed conversations really go. Like I've had a few friends nudge me in directions, and then I'll say, hey, do you remember? They're like, no, I don't remember that. And I don't think that's what I said. I said something else. And I was like, okay.
That's totally it. Because what you were hearing was what you needed to hear, not the words coming out of their mouth.
Exactly. Yeah. So right now, do you work exclusively with women, or do you work with all, genders, or,
I'm definitely open to anyone who's ready to find their authentic yes for themselves. But it tends to be, I found that like my ideal client tends to come from like a yoga teacher training, because it's typically a woman who is looking for like a big change, and they don't, kind of like I was like, I didn't realize what I was looking for, or what I was going to find, or what was going to find me when I entered that. And then now I just see when these women come into yoga teacher training, like my intuition just tells me like, oh my goodness, this woman is, she's primed and ready. In fact, our mutual friend Karen is one of those women.
Yeah, and that seriously, because yoga training, teacher training, or whatever kind of training, is serious business. When it's not something that you do lightly. When you're committing
not for the faint of heart, because you don't understand how deep you dig. Especially when you go from the 200 hour to the 300 hour, then you're digging even deeper. So it's again, it's not for the faint of heart.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. So it's a true commitment to change and evolution. So yeah, that's amazing. Awesome. So, you and I, we did some work together. So you were very gracious to participate in my Heal Thyself Summit. Which is going to be, I mentioned before, going to be released on the 17th of this month. I've had an amazing time, creating that. It's been hard, a lot of work, all that stuff, but I've met some amazing women, and I'm so happy that we connected. So you and I did some work on really kind of setting, what is it? It's a laughable goal, right? Or a laughable goal. Yes, laughably simple goal. So today we're going to talk about kind of the end result of the process, or not really end result, because there is no, this is all, we're always a work in progress, right? So this isn't like, okay, goal accomplished, I'm going to, because I'm still working on it. So the what we decided to work on was journaling, because I wanted to do more journaling.
Right. Well, and do you want to just I just have a couple of points from our first discussion. I don't want to give it away, because I want everyone to join and see how we got here. But yes, so I am always looking for a focused intention. So I don't usually use the word goals, because a lot of times those can kind of fall flat. But I do use it with the laughably simple, because it's small enough, which they'll understand in a second. But we had talked about like, really, what do you want? Where do you want to focus your intentions to? And through our discussion, you had said how you really wanted some more consistency in your self-care. You already know what self-care is. You have, definitely the tools, but you wanted more consistency in it. And then we talked a little bit about where you are now. And basically, bottom line is you've got a lot going on. That's what's standing between you and consistency is everything else in between, which that is a very common answer from everyone. So then we talked a little bit about kind of your self-care rituals, and we talked about like your drumming. We talked about how you love to read and do Reiki and write. And so then we kind of landed on journaling was going to be how you were going to get more consistent with your self-care. So we did come up with a laughably simple goal for you. And do you want to relay that, or?
Yeah, it was, I should have gotten the paper, but it's basically, I'm going to journal. I think it was 4 to 5 times a week for
At
5
least,
minutes?
yeah, at least 5 minutes a day,
Mm-hmm.
4 times a week. I
4
think
times a week. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So yes, so part of that laughably simple goal we created, remember we talked about at least, so that if you weren't able to journal 7 days a week,
Right.
then you've done the 4. And so you can do 4 check marks and then you've accomplished your goal. So that's what's really important about setting up the laughably simple goal, is defining it so that you will be successful no matter what. And that it's so simple, it makes you laugh. So
right.
we did
because right. And another thing that was helpful in this process, and I'll reveal some of what the process was, but it was the accountability. So I know that you opened yourself up to saying, hey, text me and let me know if you journal today and for how long, so I am a person who sometimes needs a little hand holding, and sometimes needs often needs accountability.
Fair.
So that was very, very helpful. And I wasn't texting you every day. I'd be like, okay, I have to text her, and I'd give you the kind of the review of the last like 2 days or whatever it was. So that was helpful. And I remembered that I had made this deal with you. So
yeah.
And it helped me become very aware and mindful of what I had committed for myself, and what, and then that you were there to kind of guide and help with that process.
Yes. And we also, I think we talked about too, having grace-filled accountability. Mm-hmm. And we talked a little bit through, which they'll learn about in a couple of weeks, but just being super graceful with yourself. Yeah. And so that's what today we're going to talk about is, where did you feel the accountability worked? Where did you feel you needed more grace, or maybe had too much grace? And we'll talk about that a little bit. But do you want to dive into kind of how things went?
Yeah. So, to be honest, the first, I forget what day it was that we talked, but then the next day I was like, I didn't journal. And then I was like, oh, okay, we did this. Let me, so I would try to, usually in the mornings, because my mornings are kind of slower, because I usually don't start my day until noon, because I designed it that way. Finally got to the point where I could do it that way. But so I would this was the freedom that I gave myself with the journaling. I said we talked about at least 5 minutes, right? So if it was a minute, if it was 5 minutes, sometimes it was even longer. One time it was like 7 minutes, so just allowing myself to feel into whatever. So if it was in the morning and I remembered a dream, I would journal about the dream and the feelings that I got from that. One time I was having an issue with body stuff. So I journaled about that, and that was really nice because it gave me the experience of just being present with these feelings, right? And allowing them to work through. So it was really nice to be able to say, okay. And you and I talked when we started this process about, I recommend this to people all the time. And I'm not, that was one of the things. I haven't been as consistent, but the consistency really helped. And it made me feel even better when I recommend it to people, where it's because I've always adopted the philosophy to if you're recommending something, then you better be doing it or have done it. So not that I haven't done it. I have done journaling, so that, it doesn't always feel bad to recommend it to people. Right. Never feels bad to recommend it to people because I know how effective it can be.
Right.
But yeah, so that was kind of my process. And if I didn't journal, I think there was one day when I didn't do it and I was just like, whatever, and I don't think I told you about it, but you would have calculated it when I didn't say And that's another thing, right? That was really helpful. You just kind of liked the comment on the thing, and it wasn't like, yay, good job, or oh, whatever. There was no judgment behind it. It was just like, okay, got it, thanks, and that was perfect too, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. And that's really what accountability is. Accountability is acknowledgement and staying on track. It has nothing to do with what you're going to do with that information. Exactly. It's not my place. If you didn't journal one day, nothing against me. That's all you do.
Right. Exactly.
And if you didn't journal one day, chances are you're either feeling bad about it or you're giving yourself grace. So why do I need to insert my opinion on that. Again, it's
Right.
like, you have the answers. I don't need to do anything but give you a little thumbs up.
Exactly. Yeah. And that was great. I mean, and that was just a part of what you do with people, right? I mean, that's just, is that kind of like a beginning process for you that you do with when you start working with the clients, with your clients?
Yeah. And everyone is different and everyone has a different goal, but really, again, it all boils down to, I know that they have the answers. I'm highly intuitive, and so I can read. I already know the answer before you tell me. So if I had thought that, if I hadn't heard from you in 3 days, I might have sent a note that said, hey, I just was checking in, not to give you any type of feeling, but just so that you know that I'm still there. But again, I knew you were going to text when you were ready. And so you did. And you said, I texted, or I journaled on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then, it was a few days later, and then I heard from you again. So, I knew that you would be consistent about it. And I was super excited, when you did text, like there was a couple of days where you're like, I journaled for 1 minute or 3 minutes or 7 minutes. And so you were like, I just know by you telling me that you were tracking it, and that by telling me, you weren't beating yourself up about it. You were using grace. And so you didn't need the reminders really from me. Now, I think though I did at the end of it, I was like, how does it feel? I wanted to get your reaction, and you were like, it's
great. That's right. And I intentionally would time myself just because I wanted to see, because you know what? It's not about the time, because it felt just as good to journal for 1 minute that it did for 7 minutes. And I think it's just how much you have to get out, right? So the time doesn't matter. It's just, there were some days where I wrote like 3 sentences, and that's fine too. But that's all I needed to get out, or that I felt that I needed to put on paper. So,
yeah, exactly. And again, using that at least, you've given yourself room for success, where you're not going to set yourself up to some, if you had said, I'm going to journal for an hour every day, I would have said, okay, but first of all, it doesn't make me laugh.
Right. I'm like, that is not laughably simple in any way, shape, or form.
But it's interesting though, like when you really dial things down and then you give yourself that, it's like, it's so easy to build yourself up based on, hey, I journaled for a minute today, or 5 minutes, or 7. And again, like you said, it's never about the time. It's not about the activity itself. It's about how you feel coming out the other side.
Right.
So just to kind of talk about that, it sounds like everything worked really well for you. And so I wanted to talk a little bit more about your why, which we didn't really discuss a ton of, but given, how you feel successful in what you've done over the last week, 10 days, however long it was, did it bring up any more feelings as to why you want that consistency in your self-care, especially when it comes to your journaling?
So, I mean, the consistency in my self-care is because I know how good it makes me feel, right? And I know how much more present I am, especially for myself, first of all, and then for my clients, right? So that's the practice stuff. And doing this Heal Thyself Summit, it just kind of punctuated that for me even more, because it's so important for us to really have our own like management of our care, our healing, right? So that was the first reason. And the second reason was because writing for me has always been, and I didn't realize this until I'm like older, like right now, like a couple of years ago, writing for me has always been tedious. And it was because there's like a writing trauma that I have, and I've explored it with an Akashic reading and all these other things. And so it's healing that wound. I mean, I used to think I was a good writer when I was a kid, high school, middle school, high school, because in elementary school, I got awards for writing. So when I go to but it's elementary school, like seriously, right? But
I love it.
And I get to high school and I have not like my regular English teacher, but like I was writing a speech. I was writing something for the yearbook. I was class president, and it just got torn up. Like the advisor that was, and he was brutal. And then and somewhere in between that, so before that, I had gone to a summer program and taken a creative writing course. And my first piece got torn up, like really, really bad. So that to me, like really, just that part of me was like, nah, no, you're not good. You're not, it's just, yes, exactly. So that was why I picked journaling, because I could have picked so many other things, right? But, so, and I keep getting told by psychics and other people that I'm going to write a book. And I'm like, that's never happening. But it's come up multiple times. And I'm like, okay, so I really need to and I've started here and there, but I'm just like, it really isn't anything that I'm really serious about right now. But I think the journaling and everything else that I'm trying to incorporate to get rid of that fear, so that's really, those were my two whys.
Yeah, those are amazing. And again, they just make the point. It's not about the 5 minutes of journaling. Right. It's about your healing, wounds and traumas, and which is just going to make you grow even more. And with the summit coming up, I mean, my gosh, I can't wait for all of this amazing information that's going to be coming in. But just that story alone is like, it's so impactful. And that's what I just love to see. Like, got this recognition and this acknowledgement of what happened so long ago, that really you're bringing yourself back to your presence, but then you're really bringing yourself back to such true joy. I mean, when you think back to elementary school, even though you said it was just elementary school, how amazing did you feel when you were getting awards? Like, didn't you feel so special and happy? Yes. And so that's where you're trying to get back to. That's what you're trying to heal yourself back into. And the fact that you're doing that for you is so amazing and inspiring.
Right. And really, that's what it is. It's for me. If a book gets written, it gets written. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Like, that's not really a goal of mine. Even though whoever my guides keep saying it is. So we'll see.
You better listen to them, because
I know. Listen, I know how it is. Okay, they will hit me over the head with a brick. I get it.
Exactly. Yeah, they don't stop.
I know.
Just get louder, and they use bigger tools. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I'm appeasing them by doing some writing. Let's see.
And they're up there going,
yeah. Okay, we see you, girl. We see you.
I love it.
I know. Yeah. So this was a great process. And, it's just about like coming back to you and really this whole process of healing. And there's so many ways to do it. And this is a great way to do it. And, I can't wait until they see the first part of this. But they don't have to wait to contact you if they want to work with you and, maybe start this process themselves. I know this is something, I don't know if this specifically, but you do offer like a 30-minute, did you mention you offered a 30-minute consultation or something like that?
It's basically 30 minutes of it. Basically is like what you and I did. So if you don't want to sign up before Heal Thyself, if you watch our session, it's really just asking the questions. What do you want? Where are you now? And then kind of we talk through the in-between, which is how we got to your journaling, laughably simple goal. One thing that I do want to add on, so we talked about your why, but and we don't have to do this specifically today, but if you are ready to add on to your laughably simple goal, or if you want to redefine it a little bit, where you redefine journal. And again, we don't have to do this today, but just step back and say, okay, I was successful in this. Should I tweak it a little bit? Should I add on? Should I subtract some? But then also I would encourage you for your next week or 10 days or whatever period you choose, set yourself up a little celebration reward at the end. So once you've again completed this laughably simple goal for so many days, set yourself up a little reward. So especially I know with journaling, my little reward tends to be buying myself a pretty new pen or a new journal or just spending 5 minutes, journaling outside in nature, or just doing something special for yourself. And it doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be a trip to Bali, although that would be amazing.
That would be amazing.
But just a little something to celebrate you, because we kind of talked about how the laughably simple goal is similar to a SMART goal. And part of a SMART goal is to reward yourself. And because the success, while having like just the good feeling of success, that's not always enough to carry you through. It's remembering your why. It's having like a little token or symbol of your success that keeps you reminded, because we're all in the process of healing. Like you said, there's not a like the end anywhere. So continue on, and there's going to be setbacks, and there's going to be, other issues that come up, or maybe more things that we realize about our past. And so it's nice to have little times of celebration to use, especially as part of your self-care, to really celebrate you.
Listen, you don't have to ask me twice. I'm good at celebrating me. Celebrating me. That's
Awesome.
one thing I'm good at.
I love
it. All right. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you and your time. So I'm going to think about the revamping of the goal.
Okay.
And I'm going to text it to you.
Excellent. Okay. That sounds perfect.
Awesome. So thank you so much for being here and talking about your process and talking about how you help other women go through their process. I appreciate you and your time. And if anybody wants to contact you, they can find you at Ludivine, which means divine light, right? Beautiful. I love it. I love it. So, and then catch us both the beginning of this at the Heal Thyself Summit. All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you. I love you. Thank you so much.